Good afternoon. We're glad to see everybody here. Come on in, grab a seat anywhere, folks. Our chairman couldn't be with us tonight, so we're going to take this thing over and see if we can get out of here by midnight. But we'd like to start the meeting, as we do with every meeting, with a solemnizing prayer, which is intended solely for the commissioners, and will be delivered by our chaplain, Michael Taylor. The invocation will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Reverend Taylor, if you could join us, please.
Lord, we thank you for the privilege and honor to be here tonight to pray for our county commissioners, dear Lord. We thank you for them and the work that they do for Rowan County, Lord, and the dedication they have for this county, dear Lord, and pray you give them the wisdom they need in this meeting tonight, dear Lord. Blessings upon them, knowledge upon them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we would like to consider approval of the minutes of the February the 7th, 2022 Board of Commissioners meeting. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. At this time, we'd like to consider any additions to the agenda. We have three items that have come up that would like to be added to the agenda. Mr. Church, would you like to go over those quickly? We'll call those U, V, and W on our agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. One for you is to purchase a 5. Well, I don't need a microphone. Hello.
Here you go.
There we go. Sit way back. For 5 250 series trucks for EMS. We're kind of wanting to get that on because, as you know, it's hard to get trucks right now. And I think we've got a place we can get some. The plumbing replacement program agreement with Hazen and Sawyer, which will start the plumbing replacement on Long Ferry, and then authorize the manager to sign a grant application for Kannapolis City Schools for the 21-22 needs-based public school capital fund, which is similar to the request you're going to hear from Mr. Van tonight. And then the fourth item is to request that the board remove consent agenda item E, request for public hearing, offer to purchase county owned.
We had an offer on that piece of property, and now we have a competing bid. And so we're going to take that off, and we are going to sell that property. We're just not exactly sure how we will go about doing that. So we will delete item E off of there. And at this point in time, we'll consider approval of the agenda.
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda is adopted.
As adopted.
Right.
Pardon me.
Right, with the 3 and the 1 deletion.
1 deletion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And we'll consider approval of minutes from February the 7th.
So move.
Second.
And we'll consider approval of. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now we'll do. All right, well, we got the consent agenda done with it.
And we need to move,
Public comment.
approve the agenda.
Approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Point, we'll go to public comment. Do we have any people? Nobody signed up for that. And those of you that are here to speak, when we get to the point in the program here that you will have additional time to speak in favor or against this program. We're not stopping you from speaking at this point in time. It's just public comment is different than the comment that you'll be able to join in to later on. All right. I'll be right with you, folks. Just killed 5 trees to do this program here. April, was there anybody signed up to speak online?
We'd like to invite any one of our remote participants, if you'd like to raise your hand if joining through the Zoom application, or *9 if joining by phone. We'll give you a moment. Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't see anyone indicating they wish to speak.
If not, we're going to close. We're going to close public comment.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
just go to item 3.
Item 3. At this point in time, we are going to have a quasi-judicial hearing for SUP 0222. The hearing for consideration of SUP 0222 is now in session. We'll focus on an application submitted by Deborah Wright to accommodate both an event center and rental cabins on her property located at 3425 Oregon Church Road. Further identification as tax parcel 378043. If you feel that any member of the board may have a conflict of interest in hearing the case, please address the board now prior to any testimony or information being presented. When the board enters into deliberations to decide the case, no further testimony may be presented. The board will render one of the following 3 decisions: approve the permit as requested with additional conditions, continue the request, or deny the request. All parties who plan to testify in this case may come forward and be sworn in. Those who testify must state their name, address at the podium for the benefit of the board's clerk. Presented must be given to the clerk and will become part of the record. This board can only accept sworn testimony. No hearsay evidence is admissible. And you'll be limited to 3 minutes.
Really got it too.
Call Rollaway Bid Company. We're gonna be.
Jim, can I?
You may have to nudge me, and get me away.
I'll kick you.
Fine. No, the actual
We'll get you through it.
background stuff. Yeah.
Well, he is in here.
Not at all. He ain't voting.
Something going on
I
with
was
the website?
consent.
Yeah, it's the,
Broken.
it's
They had
the,
dinner with us. We'll now start this proceedings, and it'll be presented by Shane Stewart. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Shane Stewart, Rowan County Planning Office, 402 North Main Street, Salisbury. I'm pitch hitting tonight for Aaron Poplin. This was his request that he was working, or his application working with Ms. Wright on, but we'll go through his material here. But so you see in the image here in the background, this is a drone footage from about a week and a half ago. This is a subject tract here, Deborah Wright, property owner at 3425 Oregon Church Road. This is her residence and existing associated storage buildings, and there's a barn on the property. Take a little closer or further look out. You see all this yellow coloring is the rural agricultural zoning district. This is Oregon Church Road. Subject tract's about 10 acres outlined in blue. It also borders Double Thumb Drive, or excuse me, road. It's a private road serving, I believe, about 14 residences, including the subject, Ms. Wright's house. Also provides access to two other private roads along the drive here. Hit a few other highlights. Of course, there's several properties down these private roads that are not built on. So there's 14 houses now, could be more in the future. But again, Double Thumb Drive is actually on Brian Seagrave's property here, and it serves these tracts identified as a 30-foot easement / right of way. This is a site plan. It's going to be very grainy to see on the screen here, but this is the overall that was submitted. And you see that 10-acre tract outlined here and existing residents, Oregon Church, Double Thumb Road that borders the western property line and also the northern and continues on off the screen. So the request for the special use permit is for an event center. And this is a proposed barn. It would be for the events. It is a 2,400 square foot. Well, let me look at the details here next, a little bit closer up. But for the event center special use permit, there's also some cabins that are associated with that event center. Cabins also, if you want just those to rent out and no event center, that's a special use permit as well. So the request would be for both of those uses. You can't see much better, but zooming in a little bit, extending off Double Thumb is a private parking lot here, driveway that will serve before you get into the facility, a little turnaround here. And this is a proposed 20-foot gravel drive around the cabin areas. And there's a few identified parking spaces per cabin. So the barn is 2,400 square feet. It would have a covered patio off the back. There's a covered pavilion here on the lower side. This is what's termed a bridal suite where folks would get ready. And again, 6 cabins here. We'll get further into the standards in a minute and kind of touch on a few related to both the event center and the cabins. They also make reference that here's our definition of an event center. It's an establishment offering the use of their facilities and associated grounds for rent or lease to any person or group for the purpose of hosting pre-planned events that are not open to the general public, including but not limited to weddings, corporate events, reunions, similar functions. And it goes on to talk about kitchen facilities and may be prepared on site or catered off site with recorded music that could be played on site. In the application on page 1, at the bottom of page 1, it does identify that there would be primarily event centers that would occur from a standpoint of a wedding. You also could have private celebrations, birthday parties, reunions. It's identified they could have small classes of 7 to 12 people for crafting and homesteading classes. Also, public festivals, vendor fairs, and kids' educational programs. Here's the track again, looking at a little bit closer, and this is about a year old, February to March of '01 aerial photo. But I want to take and show you some images where Aaron took the drone out and have a better capture of what's around the property. So this is Double Thumb on the west side, and then on the north side as our reference point. So on the top left, this is a view south, Oregon Church. This is the right property. You can see the little difference here in the fields, but that's the property line approximately, and it comes along the wooded line here. We're looking at the Hilliard property. This is her home, 3475, and then she owns all this land in between. Okay, on the top right, we're looking west. This is 3215. Hidalgo's the property owner. There's Oregon Church. On the lower left, looking east, is Double Thumb. Kind of covered right under here, but there is one home right to the rear of the event center area, and it is the Paris home. And then right here at 135 is the Jones residence. They just recently removed a manufactured home and put a site builder modular there fairly recently. And then this last on the bottom right, we would be looking north on Double Thumbs just down at the bottom of the screen. There's a driveway for the Barnharts, 124, their home. It's a single drive serving their residents. And then over here, this is Cottonwood Road, provides access to at least 3 homes. And this is 1175, is the first home you got there. And from the curve, this is the northern part, Double Thumb, that western line looking back towards Oregon Church and south. The property line approximately goes around you can see the difference in the yard here, and then following the tree line and then back up here. So all this is the 10-acre lot. From Double Thumb looking back into the Jones residence, this would be the proposed drive that would serve in the parking lot, event center, and cabins around. There's a few other little pictures. This is their existing structures to the right, and the same for the bottom left, or top left and bottom right. With Oregon Church at your back, this looks down Double Thumb. So it's definitely a little wider at the entrance, but staff didn't measure. I didn't see any reference in there where Aaron did, but per GIS, I'm guessing it looks to be around 13 feet, 15 at most. And we'll talk about the reference back to the site plan and the standards in a minute. But there's also a little drive here to the right that you come off Oregon Church on the Double Thumb and immediately turn right for a separate driveway. So there are some predefined standards for event centers, and most of those are met pretty easily. 5-acre lot, so that's met. There is a standard for public road frontage. And of course, the lot does have road frontage of about 101 feet per GIS, but they're not proposing to use your access immediately off Oregon Church. It would come down a private road. And from our measurements and looking at the site plan, I would say that that driveway off Double Thumb into the event center is about 270 feet. That would be, you would drive that distance to make your turn onto this proposed driveway. The setbacks are clearly met with the 100-foot all the way around the site for the event center components. Parking, they have plenty in the front per the standard. They have an overflow area as well for an additional 30 cars that could be accommodated. Nothing specific on lighting, but they recognized in the plan the need to control that light spilling over on the neighboring tracks. Noise would be subject to our amplified noise ordinance of plainly audible within 100 feet from a responding deputy. So pretty low standard. As far as the cabins for that, now, per the applicant, the cabins are only intended for folks that are using the event center and might want to stay there overnight. Supposedly not for, renting to the general public that's not having an event there, per the material provided. Setbacks here is much different. You'll notice I referenced the 20-foot gravel drive that wraps around the outside of the cabins. So when staff looked at the application with the rights, that was identified that that was acceptable, being that this was the cabin standards and not having to meet the 100-foot, unless this board feels otherwise through one of our criteria that it's needed to meet the 100 feet. Density determined by environmental health. We'll talk about that in a minute. Interior drives, 18 feet of compacted gravel with a hammerhead turnaround. It does meet that standard. Of course, when we're talking about 18 foot, the plan says 20, fire code's 20. You have a 13-foot wide gravel road for 270 feet. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. It's a private road. I don't think there's a maintenance agreement, but I can't confirm that. I've heard that reference, but that there's not one. So again, that section warrants attention. Parking, there's one space per cabin, so that's met. Two other standards too, the screening and buffering. The ordinance only requires screening for structures within 200 feet of the event center, and that would only be met on the northern boundary line. So there's the Jones residence, I believe, is just over 200 feet, but pretty close, and that could be discussed as well. It's just there's no requirement that that area is screened. As with all of our special use permits, there's 6 general criteria that the applicant must illustrate. And on the site plan, it would be difficult to read. You'd have to zoom in, but they do make reference to how that was met. Aaron's pointing out the comments addressed here with the width of that gravel drive. I talked with DOT and their standards, they don't see a problem with the access. Now they're only looking at, they can't control the 270-foot stretch. It's a private road. They're looking at the function of the immediacy of your turning movements off Oregon Church into Double Thumb. At most, it would probably be 50 feet if they had to make any improvements required by the state. They do not have a permit yet, but DOT did not see a problem with the request.
Onto the private road.
Again, you got to realize their standards, they can't extrapolate that down a private driveway. Now, I can't say what circumstance may warrant, we looked at the haunted house here a few months ago. That may be a different story. Every site's different. They looked at the site plan in the context of the road. So it also does not have a approved perk test, but they have hired a private soil scientist. And the northern part of the tract does not perk for septic, but all this area in between This firm believes that that will be suitable. So Ms. Wright can address that, but in the conversations she had with Aaron in our office, it seemed that they wanted to bring the plan to the board, hear from the public too, and navigate any of these issues and not obtain every permit ready for construction until they know they could be approved. See, let me hit just a few other points here. So we typically have what we call example findings. This is something Aaron provided. It's for either direction the board wants to go in, but there's always a third option anytime you have a request. Approve, deny, you can also table if the board feels additional information is needed. If there's some area of concern that we don't have addressed in our material or the applicant has illustrated, then this could be tabled for an identified future meeting. If there's any conditions that the board feels may address the compatibility, the criteria identified within, obviously the road, hours, days of operation. With those event centers that are intended to be closed to the general public, you got a different take on what type of event it is, and then what type of crowd you may expect. When it's open to the public, it may be a bit different. So that could be discussed as well. Any change in site plan details, business plan, et cetera. Are there any questions of the board?
Jane, was there any conversation in the planning board about the maximum people that could be on the property at one time?
Since this is a special use, it does not go to the planning board. This is the first
Oh, okay.
or the only stop.
With a building of 2,400 square feet, I'm just wondering what the fire marshal would rate that at.
I emailed the fire marshal, and of course, it was more about the turning movements on site that are important at this level, but there was nothing indicated it was an immediate concern from their minimum code standards.
My other question is going to be about the road, but I guess we can wait for Ms. Wright to answer that one.
Any other questions from Shane? The owner's here, Ms. Wright. Are you here? Would you like to come forward and say anything?
And this is my husband, Wally, also an owner of the property. I do want to thank a lot of my neighbors for coming out. I know that especially with the letter that went out, it was limited information, and I know that this can be somewhat concerning to neighbors, not knowing what it is that we plan to do. So I just wanted to kind of calm a little bit of this by saying, really what I'm trying to do is bring community together. I have kind of a love language in celebrating life's events and getting people together, and that's kind of my dream. And so that's what we are trying to do here. It is not going to be a huge, elaborate event center. It is going to be a 40 by 60 wood barn where people can gather. Like Shane was saying, I do not intend for the cabins to be anything more than a place for people who are coming to the event center for an event, such as a wedding or a reunion, if they have people coming out of town, or if, maybe the bride would like for her entire bridal party to stay the night before or something along those lines. That was the idea for the cabins. I do feel like we are a long ways away from from that as far as our personal plan that we have. But I was kind of following a recommendation of putting every idea that I had for the property on one plan, and that's what I did. The cabins would probably be the very last thing that we did if that were to be approved. That goes along with the bridal suite. I thought of that as an addition maybe later on. Really what I want right now is that barn where we can kind of just, like I said, celebrate some of life's events and bring community together. I had some ideas of maybe some concert series. I was going to do a concert series called The Weary Traveler. We are all coming out of this post-COVID era where we've not really been able to do much. We're incredibly stressed with all of the things that we have in life. And I just thought it would be a nice place to come together, maybe have some Christian music or some bluegrass music or something like that, where people can just come and relax and kind of just take the day off, and have a nice, safe place for their family to come and enjoy something like that. As far as the festivals go, having vendors maybe come out and support some local businesses. We do have some livestock on the property. I thought that might be nice for, I've spent a great deal of my life in Girl Scouts, over 30 years in Girl Scouts. And so I thought that might be some great programming for getting the girls or the boys. I'll support the Boy Scouts as well. And just bring the kids out and let them start to learn some things about homesteading and being self-sustainable, in this kind of era that we're in. I think everything is so easy, so easy to call Amazon and just have, whatever you need delivered to you. And wouldn't this be a great way to teach our kids that, hey, you can grow your own food and you can your own food. Being in that crafty setting of Girl Scouts, I also had the idea for maybe doing some farmhouse crafting classes or some canning classes, homestead things. So that is on there as well. And so maybe it is that I'm thinking too broadly and I have too many things going on. I think that maybe has brought some concern. But I just kind of wanted to let everybody know that this is not something that we're trying to bring huge traffic into the area. I think it's more about us just kind of celebrating life's events and getting community together. But I hope that maybe answers some of the questions that I think the neighbors had brought forward.
Well, I haven't heard from any of the neighbors. I don't know if any of my colleagues have, but I just have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Okay, so back to a maximum of attendees. What is your maximum that you're planning for?
So as far as the barn goes, with the square footage that is there and the amount of tables and chairs that we would be able to fit in there, we were thinking a max of 150 to 200 people at a time. The cabins really are meant for 2 or 3 people. In a cabin, it's not meant for, huge amounts of people. As far as outdoor events like the concert series and that, I don't really know how to answer that. I know the private event setting is a lot different than the public event. We had talked about the amount of people for the restrooms that we had planned. And then one of the suggestions was just to have some portable toilets on site if those events went over the 200 person capacity, because that's what we would have as far as facilities.
So if you have more than the 200 that would fit in the barn at a music event, for instance, where would you park all those cars?
We do have a great deal of field, so we could certainly put people in the overflow of that northern part that they showed that wouldn't park. There's a great deal of area there where we could do parking. So I believe they allow grass parking. for overflow. And so that's what we would do.
Another question is, okay, so if you're gonna have some concerts out there, noise level is gonna be a really important thing. So, you know, we've got a maximum noise level, but when we've got close neighbors, it needs to be turned down under that, really.
Okay.
And then your hours that you're gonna have for operation.
So I didn't want to limit myself too much for the future. And so I had just kind of thought that for Monday through Fridays, if we in the future were able to do anything, it would be 9 a.m. to probably 9 or 10 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays, where I'm expecting probably most of what we plan to do. Again, a 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then Sunday, just trying to keep that to a minimum, but we were thinking 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. But as far as right now, my husband and I both work full-time jobs. You know, it's not like we're planning at any immediate time to quit those jobs. So I'm thinking of craft or homesteading classes, you know, from 6 to 9:30 maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And most of our maybe wedding or reunion activity would probably be on Saturdays. I probably would offer a Sunday, but we would keep that kind of in reserve and keep it, I think, a little more quaint. That would be maybe some smaller gatherings and less hours as far as Sunday goes.
What kind of security are you planning on having?
So it was recommended to us, and I think that we will probably follow this, that we would, anybody who is utilizing the facility would need to, as part of the contract, have some sort of officer on hand for any of those kind of private gatherings. We would want, you know, whether it were a Rowan County sheriff or, you know, something like that, so that we had somebody, but we would probably just require that in the contract that they would need to.
Yeah, and I would suggest that you require off-duty law enforcement, not
Okay.
private security companies. Alcohol,
Yes, ma'am.
being that it's a private property, private event center, how are you going to control that and the behavior that can go with that?
That was one of the reasons that we really wanted to have security there. Again, I don't want to limit myself by not allowing alcohol. I certainly don't want to encourage it either, but we would limit it to beer and wine only. So, you know, I think that in that way we could kind of keep it to a minimum.
I think that's great. You're going to put that in the contract, but
Yes,
the reality of it is
right.
people are going to bring stuff in. And, you know, you start mixing the hard liquor in there and especially with weddings and things like that. I'm a retired pastor and I refuse to marry anyone who's got a drunk member in their wedding party.
Understood.
Yeah,
So
I'm tough. So anyway, what kind of language you're going to have in your contract to cover that, to be able to shut it down?
So there will be a section in the contract, and I did not bring it with me, I apologize, but we've been kind of trying to map that out. Currently, I do all the events at my church in Kannapolis, and we do not allow alcohol. So this is kind of new for me, but one thing that I have noticed is that when you're not allowing that, we do a lot of quinceañeras, we do a lot of anniversary parties and that kind of thing, but we struggle a little bit with keeping that space booked. because we don't allow alcohol. But there will be an entire section on that. It will include, if we find anything like that, they can be removed and of course not get a refund of any kind. And again, we're hoping that the law enforcement that we require as well can kind of contain the behavior that goes along with that as well.
Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Just got a few questions, and I'm sorry for these microphones, but they're new tonight, and we sound like we're giants.
I
over
know,
here
I
trying
want
to
to
talk
keep
to you.
backing up.
Just so you'll know, on the alcohol situation, you will have to get a permit for that from ALE to have it on premises. So they'll give you the requirements about how much law enforcement you need per person
Okay,
on site. So that'll be taken care of for you. My biggest concern is I'm hearing two things tonight. I'm hearing I want an event center, and then I want to have this housing around it. And to pass this as a conditional use permit, do you just want us to break out the event center for right now until you get ready to do the structures? Because that to me would be a little easier to pass.
yes,
And not only that, then we get into the environmental question of, are you going to have a community well to service all of these? Or are you going to have individual wells? Are you going to have individual septic systems? Are you going to have a leach field for all of these things? So I guess my concern here is, if you're not going to do all this at one time, then maybe we need to amend the request simply for the event center. And
Okay.
because, this is great, but the economy's so up in the air right now, the cabins may never come around.
you're right, you're right.
And,
And I know it's a lot.
Right, but I'm trying to tell you, I like what you're doing. And I'm trying to tell you, this is a way that I feel like I can vote for it.
Okay,
The other concern, and I think Commissioner Klusman addressed it, and I'm sure Commissioner Caskey might too, is the road width for emergency vehicles coming in. We've had that issue before. And the last thing we want to do is find out we made a mistake and somebody get injured. So I would probably request that road be widened to accommodate passing emergency vehicles, because we've
Okay.
done that in several of the other residential communities that we've done. I realize this is mainly your property, but still, if there's an ambulance that needs to come in and a fire truck too, and they can't get by each other, then we've got an issue. So Shane, are we able to amend this request just for the event center?
There's not an issue with removing some component of it. That's not a problem.
Well, I just don't want to turn it down, is what I'm saying. I'm just,
Well, I mean, right, a good point. And of course, they can bring back a site plan.
sure.
the
If they
board
ever want
wants.
to move forward, they just have to come back and ask that it be added to and then that'll give us a track record of what's going on out there to give us a little more comfort about, moving a project of this size forward without really seeing exactly what you want to have. So.
And really, after we hear from the public too, there might be some other changes that are warranted too.
Correct. Okay.
and just to kind of address that a little bit more, but I do come from the Girl Scout side of things. And so, when I envision cabins, I envision just bedrooms and like a little bathhouse of some kind, because that's how the Girl Scout cabins are. And I guess that's kind of what I had on my mind. And this is, of course, the first time I've ever tried to do something like this with a site plan. And so some of this will be a learning curve for me, but again, we want to be a good neighbor. We want to make accommodations so that everybody is comfortable with this. So if that is something, of course, that even needs to go and we, don't add them at a later time, that is okay too. Like I said, this is kind of the dream plan, but the dream is more about the community and just kind of getting people together. So
Sure.
we're willing to accommodate, in whatever ways, whatever section, suggestions you have, we're willing to absolutely look at those things.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess since we're talking about the roads, hey, I guess the people complain about not hearing me on the computer will be able to hear me this time. How many people live, I guess, how many residents are behind your That's a dead end road?
I think there's about 14 residences back there. I don't know. Is that? Yes. About 14 residences behind that, like going down Double Thumb.
That use that road?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Are you talking about the road that comes off of Oregon Church?
Yes, the dirt road that comes off Oregon Church is Double Thumb Road.
And it goes north that way? Or I assume that that's north here.
Sorry. Yes.
Go ahead, Mike. I'm just trying to
Okay,
go with you.
yeah. No, I live on a private road and sometimes it gets tricky living on a private road, who's fixing what, and that sort of thing. And I'm just a little worried about that much traffic at the beginning of the road and how's that going to be able to be maintained for everyone behind.
Absolutely. And if I could, I'd like to have Peyton Woody help me address that issue. And again, if there's something that we need to do to accommodate maintenance for that road. So right now, I think he was showing you where the road is very wide at the entrance of that house. That is our house. And so when we're turning off of Oregon Church, we don't really turn onto Double Thumb Road to get to our house. Our driveway goes straight off of Oregon Church, but it's connected to that Double Thumb. And I know that sounds kind of confusing, but so at the moment, as a matter of fact, I don't really even know honestly what the maintenance schedule is for that. I know that we've seen our neighbors doing a lot of work on that road, and we certainly don't want to make that worse. So if there's something that we need to do within that, if there's a budget for that and we need to, if we need to offer something towards that budget, or if there's something that we need to, pull out and be responsible for ourselves, that's something that we're willing to do as well. So.
So that is a private road.
If I could,
Privately maintained public road.
yes, if I could have Peyton address that.
Have you been sworn in?
I have.
Yes.
Okay.
Peyton Woody with Woodbine Design. It's a recorded right of way. It's public access. There's many houses that come and go back there. It is privately maintained. So as far as public access, that's allowed. Emergency service vehicles are allowed to go in and out of there freely. No one's stopping that. The road width is there. We meet the minimum fire code, 20 feet all the way in through the site. We provided a 20-foot drive, gravel drive all the way around the cabin area to help facilitate the fire trucks moving in and out of their emergency services. I don't see any other issues with it. We did talk with DOT about the driveway access, and this was their preferred location. Simply due to a site distance issue, really coming back out to Double Thumb or Oregon Church Road. As you're looking east and west there, we're right in the middle of a curve. So we wanted to give good sight distance in both directions. And the existing Double Thumb tree location or Double Thumb Road location is the best spot.
Peyton, is there public water access near the facility?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Will the barn be required to have a sprinkler system?
No, it's under the requirements, I believe, for any sprinklers.
For 200 people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a building code issue. If it's required, then storage tanks would have to be provided for adequate fire suppression. At this time, it hasn't come up.
Peyton, going back to the road, is Double Thumb Road also 20 feet wide?
Can we go back to that one picture where we're looking at the entrance? Is that possible?
April, can you go back a couple slides, please? Oh, thanks, Shane. Here we go. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can get accurate measurements for you guys if that's a huge concern. As far as we know, I think it's much larger than 20 foot wide at the entrance there where their driveway comes in. It does start necking down. Where exactly that is, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But we can get those measurements if that's what you guys are worried about.
Yeah, because If we, if you do have an emergency, you're gonna have fire, sheriff, and EMS out there. They all come. And I'm just really concerned about Double Thumb as far as getting emergency vehicles in and out. Because I know Oregon Road is not very wide as it is. And to me, this looks like Double Thumb is maybe half the width.
Right, and if we need to get to 20 foot wide, maybe that's part of one of our conditions, that we need to widen the road to 20 feet right through there, back to our driveway access.
Because there is no funding for private roads. Actually, the county doesn't do anything with roads. So it's all up to you.
Right, yeah, it's all privately maintained. We understand that. It's called out as a 30-foot private right of way. So like I said, it's a public access, but it's privately maintained.
Just 30 feet wide?
The plat map shows it 30 foot wide.
And I,
There's a recorded, we have a
have
recorded
it
plat
right
map
here.
that's on file with Rowan County.
But you're talking about the right of way, not necessarily the width of the road.
Correct,
Yeah.
Right.
correct.
The
Yeah,
right
not
of
the road, the actual right of way that's
Talk
recorded.
about the width of the road.
Right.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
the asphalt.
you're saying there's enough right of way there that
Sure
if
it
we
is,
need
dirt
to
road.
widen the road.
Right, there's 35 foot wide right of way there.
Well, yeah.
The road may neck down, but we could get to 20
They've
feet.
got
no
a
problem
30-foot
within that
right of way.
recorded right.
And most
And
of
there's
that
no
would
reason
go
we can't have a 20-foot
into
road.
our property.
Right. Right.
The road goes all the way around our property.
Yeah, I think a maintenance agreement could be come to, to maintain that access back to our proposed driveway location.
Was there any discussion? Have you had any discussion, Shane? And I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Peyton, about an emergency exit? If you couldn't get out the planned driveway the way it is? Is there a secondary way to get off the property?
You could come back out through, around the back of the property, I guess, and come back out to Oregon Church Road. If you came around the south side there and come back out. I mean, you'd have to drive through the grass to do so, but I don't think there's anything prohibiting.
I'd just like to see that as part of the plan.
Any other questions at this point? Good. All right. Somebody wake up the attorney over there. I'm gonna try something here. Could we have a show of hands of people that are gonna speak in favor of this tonight? Well, that'll be easy. Is there any way that we could take a quick break here and let you folks decide about 3 or 4 people to speak? So that we're not here to midnight? All right, Noel, you can talk for 3 minutes. Each of you can speak for 3 minutes. I'm just trying to not fall asleep up here. Another hour or so. Okay. All right.
Speak against it now.
Oh, yeah. All right. Mr. Attorney, will you take this over?
And I'm trying to get our fire marshal, Deborah Horn, joined into the meeting.
Mhm.
And so Randy is sending her the link right now so she can join remotely if you guys have any specific fire code questions. She's familiar with the project. So hopefully she'll be able to join in just a little bit, but we can move through the speakers and then have Deborah join questions at the
Okay.
end.
Who has a list?
A new list. Have to take them in order as they stand up that were sworn in. And we'll need everybody to state your name and address, please. So just so she can have it for the minutes.
Okay. I'm Carolyn Bost, 1256 Songbird Lane, Rockwell, North Carolina, 28138. One of my main concerns, and it's been talked about, is the possibility of blocking Double Thumb Road because the road is not but about 14 feet wide after you get into the front of their property. And I know that it states on that map that we received, this map up here, that it needs to be at least 20 feet wide. There was an event held there last year at this location. Traffic was blocked for at least 10 minutes before a resident could get down the road. This creates a concern, like we've talked about, for emergency vehicles or fire or EMS to get down to the people that live down there. Because we did have a major house fire there last year, and they could only bring like 2 trucks down, and they had to run hoses for the rest of it. And it resulted in a total loss with the loss of 2 lives. So that's a big concern for us because we lost family and neighbors last year with that fire. And it is a narrow road, and I've been there for 37 years. And it's just hard. You have to pull over to let somebody else come by. And that's one of my major concerns. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Ben Bernhardt. I live at 325 Glover Road in Salisbury, and I own the property that's north of this. My son lives on that property. That driveway that goes up through there is to his house. So that's the reason that I'm here. A few things that I've got concerns about are the road and then how narrow it is. It is wide up there at Oregon Church Road. If you look at that black line around their property, she was saying that most of the widening would be on their property. That road is not on their property. It's actually on Brian Seagrave's property. And where it makes the 90-degree right-hand turn and goes to the east is on my property. And it is a 30 or 35-foot deeded right-of-way for access. One of the main concerns I have is what Carolyn spoke to of the safety of getting ambulance and fire in there. She told you about how that was. If you come out that driveway and meet someone past, I'd say 100 feet or so off of Oregon Church Road, you're gonna have to pull over and let one go and the other one can get back on the road. One of the things I'd like to point out is old staff comments that was taken off the website for where I guess it's your planning staff, mentioned some of the things that I'm concerned about. I'm going to read that to you if you don't mind. It's planning staff is the primary concern is the access off Double Thumb Road. As mentioned earlier in the report, event centers have special use requirements of 35-foot road frontage on a state maintained road. And while this site does have over 35 feet of state maintained road frontage, it is not being used for access to the event center. They have 104 feet that if they use that to get the event center, it would take away all these safety issues going down Double Thumb Road. Also, they showed a site looking at the junction of Double Thumb looking out onto Oregon Church Road. That was looking northwest. If you look the other way, if you look southeast, there's a crest and a hillside right there. I'm not surprised they didn't show you that view of looking south on Oregon Church Road, because you have to pause for 3 or 4 seconds before you pull out to be sure there's not a car hidden in that dip. And these 100 cars that come to this wedding is not going to know that. So I think that's a concern. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Barnhart, I have a quick question.
Yes,
So it's a 30-foot deeded right of way.
that's the way I understand it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So that's going to have to be resurveyed. And if the applicants need to widen the road, then that needs to be resurveyed and the road moved onto their property.
I'm not an expert on that, but you're probably right. And like I say, the majority or most of that road, well, all of that road down to where their commercial entrance is going to be belongs to Brian Seagraves, which is across toward the northwest.
And is this a dead end road?
It dead ends. I think Carolyn lives in the last house. That Songbird Lane is the very last house. And like I say, there's 14 residences there, and you'd be surprised how many times you meet someone. And I don't go down there every day. My son lives there and we're down there for that. But I think they pull off and let people go by right regularly.
Thank you.
Yes, my name is Frankie Jones. I'm the one that, the land borders on the right side, if you're looking up at the thing right there, I think it's right here. This is me. Right here on the, okay, it's right here in this section right here, you can't read it. Where's my phone? Well, sorry about that, because even though I wear glasses, I can't read it on here, so I had to magnify it, take a picture of it, but it says organic buffers will be planted for the two neighbors that will be most impacted by the project. And then on the other side of this map, it says per Rowan County zoning, this part right here. And over here is where I'm reading the first part, where it says that buffer will be for both residents. But right here, this part says per Rowan zoning, no buffer is required along this residence. Well, me and my wife, this is Courtney Jones, we have just built a stick-built house about right here. There was a single-wide mobile home out there, a 1970 model. We bought the land, had the mobile home demolished, all coded by Rowan County. And the house is not completed yet, but we bought this to retire. And, you know, now this thing's coming. You know, no buffer, loud music, drinking, and it's gonna be right, you're gonna be able to walk out the back right there in my house. You know, I was some drunk over to my house. You know, I moved out there for peace and quiet. You need to say something.
So we would like a buffer considered for
If
our,
it's approved.
if it's approved, we want a buffer line as they have given to Melanie's property line as well. We don't know what, I believe it says a type A. What is a type A buffer? What is that?
Because this mark right here is a buffer all the way across for that little house right there. And my house is not a lot bigger than hers, but this is the long line. There's no buffers required, but it says over here, buffers will be planted. So.
Will it or will it not?
And about right quick, I know I gotta go. I'm at 2.5 minutes. I'm sorry to take your time, but the person that died is the lady that sold me my land. And the fire trucks had to line Orchard Road because there was no road. Get down the road. Thank you.
If you don't mind, could I ask you a question? Would you be willing to accept this if we wanted a 2-stage buffer, which is tall bushes and trees behind to shield that area?
If it's approved, I would really appreciate that. I tried to plant some pine trees out there myself and they all died, but I just dug them up out of the woods, but I'm not really a good.
Well, and I understand that, but what I'm saying, that's what we're here for, is to determine what you need from them for them to remain a good neighbor. And that's what we're trying to find out, is if that's acceptable to you, we can put that in the requirements for the special use permit. And I get where you're coming from, I really do. And, you know, the last thing we want to do is have a project go in that's intrusive to everybody. And safety is one of our biggest concerns, and of course, privacy is also. So I understand where you're coming from. I empathize with you, but I think we can work something out that fits both criteria. So That's why I was asking if you're acceptable to that, if we put proper screening up that will not only visually screen it, but from sound also.
We would need to know what the screening would be.
Well, we can put that in the requirement. Shane can tell us what's available as far as the special use permit conditions are, so.
And will they be a certain size when they're?
Well, they'll
planted?
grow.
Or-
I mean,
Right, I
you
understand they'll
put them
grow,
in,
but
we do this a lot with solar farms where, people's gonna see this big fence. We require two-stage buffering, which means you have an evergreen bush that's low, and then you have like a Leland cypress behind it. So as time moves on, the lower bush grows to be 5 or 6 feet tall. The Leland cypress get to be 30, 40 feet tall. So there's ways that we can accomplish this if you're acceptable to it.
there are agreements that if like the plants die, they're replaced in a timely
That's always in the
manner.
agreement
Okay,
for
I'm sorry,
for
this is
screening. Yeah.
First time of ever
Well,
having
and I
to.
want you to ask the questions
Okay,
now,
thank you.
but yes, if we can put in the requirement that it be maintained, which means if they would have a insect come in, kill one of the Leland cypress, they would have to replace it. Now, you'd have to understand, they couldn't replace a 30-foot one. They'd have to put in a new one and let it grow. But yeah, but I don't think that these folks want to be bad neighbors. I think I understand what they want and I understand what you want. So I think we can reach some type of agreement, if that's acceptable to you guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Nene Brown, 151 Double Thumb Road, Rockwell, North Carolina, 28138. I am in the very last house,
Could you pull the microphone down to your mouth, please?
very last house. Is that better? Okay. And I have a couple of concerns, as this is a dead-end road. How many people are going to come down and turn around in my driveway? I also have children. Well, I have a son who has multiple friends, neighbors, friends he comes homes with that rides bicycles. I have neighbors who rides horses up and down this road. And as we said, it's only 13, 14 feet wide. Is that going to cause an issue with this entrance being on Double Thumb Road rather than being on Oregon Church Road? And then you said, I think they may postpone the cabins, but that was one of my concerns. But how are they going to contain those people from wandering around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? And especially if alcohol is involved and they come down and they see me out walking my dog or letting the dog out to go pee or see the horses or see anything. I don't feel safe being pinned in. And as for the road, since it is a private road, my husband and some of the neighbors take turns scraping the road. We scrape it, we have to gravel it. When I got married 30 years ago and was dating 3 years prior to that, it was a muddy dirt road. We have done lots and lots and lots of gravel to where it's finally, it's dusty. But, and you can go out and look at the back of my car, you can't read my car tag. I mean, it is filthy. So how are you going to keep down on the dust with 100 cars coming in? And how are they going to know where to stop if this does have to come on Double Thumb Road instead of off of Oregon Church Road, where you can maybe put balloons or whatever? Those are my concerns. And would it be used also for construction vehicles? As we had mentioned, my husband had family in the family home. The house burnt 12 years ago. And his mother-in-law survived, or his mother survived. But then his brother and his sister were in there taking care of each other. And they both died a year ago, January the 10th. And they had fire trucks from 30 different places trying to get water to us. They broke the culvert under Double Thumb Road, which we, as a private road, had to finance and replace ourselves because it was volunteer firemen who came down there, and it's a private road. So if the state can't come in and take care of that, I'm a little concerned about that. Thank you.
Jason Bernhardt, 124 Double Thumb Road, Rockville. Not to repeat some of the things that have been said, but I think we need to shine a little more light on the turning in and turning out. I don't think that map does it justice as to how it feels. If you're coming what would be south and you turn into Double Thumb Road, it is almost like a hairpin turn. And it's blind. You can't see if anyone's coming. And often somebody will be exiting Double Thumb and we'll be entering. And it'll be like a oops moment, you know, who's going to let who go? And it's a juke and a jive going on there. People that are familiar with the road, we've kind of got it down pat. People that are not, so what's going to happen is people are going to have to stop out in Oregon Church Road. And the person that's in Double Thumb is not going to know what to do. They're not going to back up. They're not going to give you room. And it's, for me, it's a safety issue coming and going. The condition of the road, it has improved a lot. We all work at it. And when it rains, the amount of water that runs, all that property heads downhill to the beginning of my driveway. And the rain and the water that runs those ditches and it overflows the ditches, I'll have to drive through water to get to my property a lot. I don't see being able to maintain what we have and keep it up to passable with what's going to be going on there. On a Bluebird day, no problem. But I've been there, snowstorm, hurricane, floods, and that's an issue. It's also an issue for me parking in the grassy area if it's that wet. Sounds like a good idea, but it's not going to work out. And I can see some four-wheel drives and some alcohol and some hopping the ditches and things like that. And that's just not what we want. Fire trucks, EMS, just like I hate to keep repeating, but it's concerning to me. I have a 5-year-old daughter. Heaven forbid if something was going on and I needed them to get down there. I would hate for something like this to be going on and stop that. And so, yeah, we're going to have a 5 o'clock wedding. So at 4:30, do I wait till 5:05 to leave? Because that's what I'd probably do to avoid what we're going to have going on there. I don't like to complain without a proposal. And they have road frontage to Oregon Church Road. And if this is approved, I would like to see that is how you access and leave this and leave Double Thumb out of it. And I think that could solve a lot of things if it was approved. Thank you.
Jason, where is your driveway on this map?
That was my dad that spoke earlier. I'm the very first driveway in that curve in what would be the northwest corner there. Yeah. That's where I access my drive right there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman Green, I'm gonna step out and get something off the printer related to this. I'll be right back.
My name is James Brown. I live at 151 Double Thumb Road, Rockwell, 28138. My main concern also is with the entrance at Double Thumb Road. As he just stated, if there's somebody coming out, you cannot turn in. You have to wait for someone to come out of Double Thumb Road to be able to turn in. It is a hairpin turn. This does not depict what's actually there as far as curvature of the road. Years ago, when you come out of Double Thumb Road, you are actually going into a curve back to the left. When I was coming in, I had stopped. I had to wait on a car to crest the hill coming from opposite direction. I was rear-ended there because people coming around that curve will speed around that curve. And if the guy he just didn't stop. So I was rear-ended there trying to get into the driveway. So that's a concern with a lot of traffic coming in and out. As my wife said also, we do have children down there, a lot of bicycles. We do have motorcycles, four-wheelers, this type thing that ride on this road. This is a private road. As far as us keeping it up, we're doing our best. But that is my main concern, is trying to get traffic off of Oregon Church Road onto Double Thumb. And the way I see it, it would be better if they would make their driveway on their property line coming off of Oregon Church Road instead of using Double Thumb. Thank you.
My name is Brenda Bost, 745 Songbird Lane, Rockville, North Carolina, 28138. I have a lot of concern about the road because whenever it rains, we look like the Yadkin River going down through there. And as much as we have spent money to try to maintain that road, it is very hard to do. And we have looked at the state trying to take over the road, and they want us to do everything that needs to be done and do the ditches and everything and have it maintained before they will take over the road. Therefore, that's the reason we still have a private road there. Another reason that we have so much runoff out there is because a lot of the land is full tallow out there, and it is hard for the rain to soak into the ground when we have those rains like that. And also, we have 40 acres at the very back. I am a neighbor to Carolyn, both, out there. And so I am there a lot of weekends by myself as my husband travels for his job. And so I don't want to be out there with, alcohol and us being cut off with no way to get out, because there's only one way in and one way out from our house. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Shue. My address is 1185 Songbird Lane, Rockville, North Carolina. I live right beside Carolyn. She's my mother-in-law. I have multiple concerns, and you've heard most of them tonight. I'm just going to reiterate a few that are the main points to me. My husband and I have children. We own horses. We own several other animals. My kids ride bikes all up and down the road. They ride their horses up and down the road. So it's a concern to me when there's 100 cars that are going to decide to turn in and up and down the road when my kids are trying to ride their bicycles or trying to ride their horses, because they do ride the horses, not just up and down that road, but they do ride them to go see their friends that are further down Oregon Church Road. So if they're trying to ride their horses and somebody's not paying attention and they whip in and smack the horse, then you've got my child who now has a concussion and broken bones, and you have a horse that I now have to put down because you've got somebody that wasn't paying attention because they were acting stupid because they were late for some cutesy little event that they were going to. And then there's an issue. So I have a problem with this. Not to mention that we've been here forever and ever and ever, and it's been quiet, and it just needs to remain a quiet space. It's an issue for people. It's an issue for, you know, cars coming in and out. There's also a tree right there. I'm not sure if it showed in any of the pictures. It's their pine tree, I believe. It's on their property. It does impede the view of traffic going to the left. So if you're not careful, then you can't see anybody coming. So you can get smacked by a car if you don't really watch carefully on that one. So that's also another thing. I know one of the neighbors noted the fact that when we had all of the fire trucks coming in and out, there was the issue of the broken culvert pipe that we did have to replace. So there's that. My son is one of the ones that helps maintain the road. He uses my mother-in-law's tractor. He also uses our tractor. So that's wear and tear on our vehicles, on our agricultural equipment that we're putting out, which is perfectly okay because we live on that road and we use that road. They don't maintain that road. They don't help with anything on that road. They've been notified about it before. They've never bothered to offer to help do anything. And then another question I have is, once all of this is said and done, if y'all do go ahead and approve this, who enforces all of this? If we approve the buffers and we approve the event center and we approve all of these things, who enforces all of these things and make sure that they do every single thing that you say that they have to do? And then what happens when they don't do it and we have a problem? Who am I supposed to come complain to? Who am I going to have to fight with to get things accomplished? Because that's going to be an issue. You guys are overloaded. You have 100 things going on. Everybody else in the county has 100 things going on, and they're not going to be worried about the fact that she didn't plant a buffer, or that a tree is dead and she's not replacing it, or that they're not maintaining their part of the road that they said that they were going to maintain. Y'all aren't going to be worried with that. I'm going to be stuck with that. Everybody else on that road is going to be stuck with that. And that's not fair to us, because we're going to have to fight over the fact that this stuff's not being done. These are all concerns that all of us that have lived on this road for a long period of time, or have it's a complicated situation. My other question is why didn't she just come to us and tell us that this was something that she had thought about? Because when we got these letters, it was the first time any of us had ever heard about it. That's not being a good neighbor. If you want to be a good neighbor, you should have come said something. I have one other thing to say. With thought to the fact that the road has such a sharp turn in, why is there not being a consideration for a turning lane being put in? I know it's a private road, but with the fact that it is not the easiest place to get into, and she's going to be putting in an event center, why should there not be a turning lane?
To answer one of your questions, and everybody might have the same question out there, any attachments that we would make to the permit would be supervised by the county before they would be allowed to open the center. The plants would have to be planted, and whatever else, screening as an example would do that, or whatever the attachment would be.
Right, but after the fact, after it's all said and done, and after it's opened, and after we're down the road with it, then who
The county would still have the planning department to keep that, to make sure that those attachments were continuing to be done as promised.
they do have road frontage on Oregon Church Road, which is their actual address, then why can't they use that instead of using a private road that's privately maintained?
My name is Catherine Chu, and I live down 1185 Songbird Lane, Rockville, North Carolina, 28138. I have two main concerns. My first concern is I do own horses at my address. And what were to happen if they were to have a wedding or an event that night and there would be alcohol involved? Is somebody going to come and try and ride my horse bareback? Who's liable if they get hurt or if they hurt my animals? My second concern is there is farmland down there. So we have farmers who bring big equipment, combines, big tractors, who come down this road to take care of their farmland. And that's going to cause a lot of dust. So those are my two main concerns.
Greg Clark, 1390 Cottonwood Road. My two issues is a safety issue, getting in and out, and then who polices the amount of people that show up. You have a concert, they say 200, 2,000 show up. What do you do?
Oh, the sheriff's department.
And hope that works.
They'll come.
Okay, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Hey, sir, sir, I'm sorry, I mean, what was your first question? I missed the first one.
It's a traffic safety issue, just like everybody else is talking about. You go pull out there, you look towards Mount Pleasant. It happened to me this morning. F-150 coming up there. I seen about 8 inches at the top of the cab because that crown in the road where the entrance probably should go if this gets approved off of Oregon Church Road, because you'll be higher up and you can see both ways.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it for everybody that wants to speak in opposition to it? Second Vice Chairman.
No, I'm not. I'd like yours.
There is a question, Vice Chairman, with regard to this access, and we'll be glad to try to work it out. As we were talking about this, first and foremost, the code requires direct access to a public road. So that's your first question, is whether you want to deviate from that standard. So the second question is whether this property owner has a right to use Two Thumb Road. Double Thumb, excuse me. Double Thumb. And so what we've heard is that it's a public road privately maintained, or it's a public access privately maintained. And my question is, and that's what I was asking, and they don't have anybody here that can answer it, is all of the deeds to the surrounding lots that were subdivided are sold together with access over Double Thumb Road. So they're sold together with the right to use that access. And the plat that they reference that creates that access shows Double Thumb Road as a private 30-foot right-of-way to be maintained by the residents, not a public access or a public road. So my question is, and I think it's going to be subject to the applicant providing something satisfactory to this board, that they have a right to use that for a commercial purpose. And I think that that's a question that needs to be answered for this application. it seems to be front and center, the primary issue, together with additional screening and issues that we've heard. But don't want this board to walk down and approve a plat or a plan that we might have to deal with the legal issue later with regard to who can use that double thumb road for what purposes. I mean, that's my position, is that it's a substantial question because the plat clearly shows that it's a private 30-foot right-of-way, not a public road, not a public access. Sure, people may use it, but from the standpoint of do the rights have the legal right to use that 30-foot private right-of-way when their deed doesn't include that in their legal description? Sure.
First of all, exactly, this goes against exactly what I'm trying to do. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to cause any problems with my neighbors. I love my neighbors. It was my understanding that everyone knew when we moved in. Everyone who would come by and visit knew what my dream was. I know that I've spoken to several of you personally about what I was trying to do. This is the first time that I've kind of heard the backlash about that, but I understand. It seems like most of this is about the road, and I just want to mention that Peyton and I actually went to the North Carolina Department of Transportation because in reading the ordinance, we knew that they wanted it off a public road. And we were going to plan this road. We really wanted it off of Double Thumb, but we had talked about bringing the road right here off of Oregon Church and coming around to our property this way. And the North Carolina DOT actually asked us for safety reasons to please not use that access because of the curve that is there. They felt like it would be safer to use Double Thumb. So that is how we wound up with Double Thumb Road. It does work better for our property, obviously, because in trying to maintain kind of a difference between our private space and this event space, that would put the driveway through our private space. But I'm okay with that. I believe my husband is okay with that. We've talked about having to do that if it was the ordinance. If that is the biggest concern, by all means, I don't want that to be a sore spot between us and our neighbors. And I also just kind of wanted to mention, you know, the fire and emergency vehicles is an issue out there. I believe that is true. The recent fire that we had, my husband and my father-in-law were the first people on the scene of that fire. My husband broke down the back door and risked his own life to try to get those people out of that house. Those children that ride their bikes, their motorcycles, their four-wheelers, they ride through our property all the time. That is the neighbor I want to continue to be. I have no issues with any of that. I don't want this to be a contention between us. I don't want that. I don't want to live with people that are angry with me. I just
right.
wanted to mention that about Oregon Church.
Okay. Let me just mention to you, you have several things that we can vote on this right now. You can withdraw your application at this point And it's my understanding that you have more length of time. You could bring him back quicker if you made the changes, got your legal description straightened out so that we would be aware of what that would be. Or we can table this to some time in the future. For your benefit, you have a choice right now, or we'll vote on it. And then I don't know how long it is until you could bring it back up again if you decided to make those changes and do it.
Can we defer 1 month?
You have to ask Shane about that. I don't know if you can put a time limit on that.
Trying to work out some of these issues.
And Shane's going to explain, but I think we can certainly take action to table it tonight. Typically, it would go to the next 6 o'clock meeting as a potential public hearing continuation. So I wouldn't close the public hearing. I would hold it open to the next meeting. In the meantime, they can amend, if they want to amend the application, they can amend the application in this same process. I'll defer to Shane to go through the procedures, of what that might look like.
So obviously you can deny the request. The tabling is of course important to identify, is this going to be tabled for a 30-day period where the second or the third Monday in the next month. If that's identified, then that would give the rights a chance to bring this back. We don't have to re-advertise. If they need more time, then we'll notify the public again, put a sign back up. The board can also conditionally approve a request and then give 45 days to see that site plan back. I don't know if the board is there. Also, we got 4 members, and the ordinance says that this would have to be 3-1. So keep that in mind too. We got the chairman out. Couple other things. We heard several points that maybe we want some more information. We don't want to identify a time period and then just allow the rights plenty of time to bring this back if that's the board's discretion. One thing I want to make sure that's very clear, and of course I didn't work with the rights except for very early on in the process, it looked a lot different. It looked agritourism related, which does not apply here. If you have concerts, I don't know how you can not exceed the noise ordinance. So if you're going to have events that are, maybe they're periodic, and this board, we don't bring applications to you every weekend at a certain site. So that's something I don't really have the best grasp of what that would look like. But again, plainly audible within 100 feet of the source is a very low standard. And every wedding venue that ever comes up, we mention that to them. And it's like, well, we can either play it inside or soft music. And most of the time, if it's a guitar kind of strumming, it's not going to be loud. But the public, I'm sure, is concerned if there's going to be louder music, anything that's amplified. Any questions about the first part of that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to table, but are we going to keep it open-ended? Do we want to keep it open-ended, or do we want to just set it for the next?
If we keep it open, then they have to come back within 30 days. And
so if the board doesn't, I don't think we've closed the public hearing.
No.
And so what we can do, and everybody who's in here, we can take action to table it and hold the public hearing open until the second meeting in March, which would be about your 30-day period. That 30-day window, the applicant has the opportunity to either decide to proceed as is at the second meeting in March, amend the site plan between now and then and resubmit it to staff, or withdraw it and start over at a later date. And so I think if we don't close the public hearing tonight, all we're doing tonight is a motion to continue the public hearing until March.
What?
March 21st.
So I think for me personally, I wrote down a little bit of what everybody was saying. 90% of the issues is coming off of that road. You know, I like to see an option of site plan coming off of Oregon Road. And I don't know if that's 30 days is enough time for them to do that or not.
Shane, can that be approved by DOT for a road, for an entrance cut within 30 days? I know that's tight, but.
It would be, and you know, the thing too, it provides a unique situation. They don't want another driveway right beside an existing drive. But, you know, that's nobody's fault but the current setup. So, I mean, only the applicant can indicate in terms of a revised site plan, get all those information pieces in, get a legal opinion on that. Can they use this right away? Whatever they provide the board, 30 days isn't a lot of time.
No,
I know the public don't want to be, you know, strung out with some longer period of time, nor the rights, but in terms of bringing something back, putting it on the agenda, you're probably looking at more like 2 weeks worth of time.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is we could make our vote based on having a cut off of Oregon Church Road. That be one of the requirements for the special use permit, could we not?
Maybe you could condition that upon seeing the evidence, could it obtain a driveway permit?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Because I'm with Commissioner Caskey, the angst here has been the use of the road. And I think if we eliminate that out of the equation, some additional screening and maybe some other things that would isolate their property from the rest of the neighborhood would probably be a good answer. And I feel like that I know I could vote for it then if we take our concerns off this road. And I think all those concerns were justified. I don't think they're asking for too much. And, you know, the road was never designed to accommodate that kind of traffic. And the last thing we want to do is put 14 neighbors in jeopardy because of this one event center when we can do something to reroute that entrance and eliminate that problem. So I'll second Commissioner Klusman's motion, and then I'll make a motion to continue to leave the current quasi-judicial hearing open until March 31st. The second.
And that's first and second.
Well, I guess my question is, one of my questions is that if DOT doesn't want to give them another cut and then they're not legally allowed to use the other road, then I don't know what.
We were just talking about that, and I think that they're looking at coming up with maybe an option at Double Thumb that would be short of the private access where their driveway currently is. You know, they might have an option to come off there and swing the road up. Instead of coming on the Double Thumb and coming in, they would just come in at their driveway. I mean, I'm just talking out loud, but they need to create the option to do that.
All right, we have a motion and a second here. You have some more questions, Mike? Go ahead.
Well, you said March 31st, which is a Thursday.
21st, excuse me. 30 days.
All right, so everybody's comfortable with this. I'm sorry, we'll have to answer them later. So we'll do what you're suggesting then is that we table this until 2 weeks into March, to second meeting in March.
The public hearing.
And leave the
open.
public hearing open. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have tabled this, and now we are coming out of public hearing.
No.
Closing it.
Yeah, we're coming out.
Does everybody understand? So what we're doing is we're simply holding this public hearing open until March, the third Monday in March at 6, March 21st. And so everybody can come back, they can reopen the hearing I am hoping that if there's a revised site plan, that we can get that to planning staff and try to communicate with the neighbors, any revisions to a site plan, if it includes additional landscaping or relocation of the driveway. If we can get that to people in advance of the meeting, it would certainly help. And so we'll just stay in touch. If you have any questions, just communicate with our planning staff with regard to the next meeting. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're gonna take a quick recess for about 5 minutes here, and then we'll start back. Before we go though, I would like to move our friends from the school system up, and we're going to take you next, and then we'll finish up our work after that. All right, we're in recess. At this time, we'd like to introduce Mr. Anthony Van, and he's representing the school systems here. Mr. Van, go ahead.
Vice Chair, Commissioners, County Manager, Mr. Church, thank you for having me this evening. I want to talk to you tonight about a needs-based public school capital fund grant that's available for school systems currently. The grant was established to assist school systems and counties across the state for critical capital needs funding. Right now, the grant is available for eligible counties for construction for new facilities, additions, repairs, and renovations. I think they have currently in the neighborhood of about $400 million that's available for the grant. We have as you know, we have our Knox Overton K-8 project that we've been working on now for some time, and we believe that it is a great candidate to take advantage of this grant. If awarded, the grant breaks down middle, elementary and high schools, different amounts. With this being a K-8, we would be looking for the $40 million award. If it's awarded, we could receive up to $40 million. Our match as a county would be about 15% of the grant award. So if we were awarded $40 million, we'd be looking at about a $6 million match. It's much better than what it has been in the past for this grant. On February the 7th, the Board of Education did approve the grant. They approved for us to move forward with it and bring it to you this evening. The deadline for submitting the grant is March the 15th. So that's the reason why we wanted to go ahead and get on your agenda and discuss it with you. And currently, our recommendation would be that we would ask the Board of Commissioners to approve the grant as well, so we could move forward with it and submit it to DPI for consideration. The grant itself should be a part of your package, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions commissioners may have pertaining to the grant.
Mr. Van, I read the entire application because I wanted to make sure I understood it. And what I saw was that if this grant is approved, that the commissioners have to sign off before you send the grant in, guaranteeing that we will fund the difference, which was going to be $30 million, not $6 million. So can you tell me what that discrepancy is about?
Well, the match for us, for Rowan County is the match for the $40 million, if we were to receive the whole amount, is 15%, which is about $6 million. The actual project itself
which we are, as you know, right now, we are fighting challenges of items continuing to rise and rise and rise, and our cost for our project certainly has increased more than we would like for it to be. But the match itself for the 40 is the 15%, which is $6 million. The money that was already set aside and put in the budget for us to move forward with, the $55 million would still be in place, but this would reduce that amount that we would have to have for this project.
Well, that is not what the application says, because I read it twice and even had Senator Ford look at it and go back to Department of Instruction to make sure on it before I said anything, and that is not correct. So I'm not really sure what's going on here, but this is the first time we've heard of this. And from what I've been told, that if we agree to send this grant forward and it's accepted, that the county is then on the hook to pay the difference. So I'm just really not in favor of doing something like this till we have more information on it. And as usual, y'all wait until the last minute to bring something in front of us so that we can not have time to investigate it. And this has happened ever since I've been on this board. So I'm getting a little bit weary of this stuff. If you guys want to do a project, why don't you start including the commissioners like we set up a joint capital improvement committee years ago, which hasn't met in the last 4 or 5 years. So to me, you're not being fair to the taxpayers and letting everybody be involved to make these decisions. And I think it's time all that stopped.
As you're aware, this project's been going on for multiple years, and as you're aware, the commissioners froze this because of COVID. This is not a new project. This has been on the books for multiple years. It's not the first time we brought this to you. Matter of fact, this is the second time this grant has been brought to you for this K-8. The first time the commissioners denied the grant because they were going to tie up the lottery funding for 5 years. That is no longer the requirement. The lottery funding is not tied up any longer with this. So I'm not sure how I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know of any question on here that we haven't answered yet. This is the second time we've had this grant for this project. So I'm not sure why it's you think that this is last minute, because it's not.
When does this have to be submitted by?
March the 15th.
It's pretty last minute to me. It's 2 weeks for a project that's been going on for years, according to you.
Well, it was on hold. It was put on hold because of COVID uncertainties. And I'm sure the manager can agree that the project was put on hold. So.
Anthony.
Yes, ma'am.
Doing some reading about these grants, and if I remember correctly, is if we have a separate K-6 and then, junior high, that the elementary is allowed thus much and the junior high gets this much. And if they're put together, they get less than the two put together. Is that true?
Of course, our plan is to close Knox and Overton and create a K-8 and then close those 2 schools and build 1 new one.
Right.
The indication that I've received is that from DPI, maybe my information is wrong, is that you apply for one or the other. So I don't think you can take the elementary school money of 30 million that they give for elementary schools and then take 40 million for the middle school and put the 2 together.
Okay, so
it's not the case, but maybe that's not accurate. But.
Okay, so we're getting the middle school rate of 40 million.
That's correct. That's what we were asking about. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We felt like our odds would be better to try to apply for the middle school rate. Yes, ma'am.
Anthony, what I see on here that said this can be used for new school facilities, additions, repairs, and renovations.
Yes.
So if we were able to get the grant, and for some, if the school system decide they want to go a different route, can they use this for something else, or it has to be used for that particular project?
I was told before that you probably could look at changing, but I think there's going to be a lot of interest in this grant. I mean, in this grant for particular schools. So I think our odds are better if it was if it's for this project itself.
I mean, after it's awarded, if something changed, will we still have the money or we can only use it for Knox?
I think if you can show that you have something else in the pipe, I think you could change it for it. Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess the question, what was, so the school board voted for this grant last meeting? Is that what you said?
We did, but when we brought it here, the requirement then was that you would give up your lottery funding for 5 years. It was still a net positive for us, but at that point, commissioners passed.
No, I meant recently for this grant, this particular one.
This particular grant, since it's been revised, we've not applied for it. It was the same needs-based grant, but it had different requirements.
But this school board's voted on this one.
Yes, we voted on
When-
this. The
when
school
did-
board voted on this February. Yes, they just voted on this this month.
Did all the school board members vote for it?
Yeah, it was approved. Yes.
Was it unanimous?
I can't remember. I believe so. Yes, sir. I think so.
Okay.
Pretty sure it
Because I know
was.
last time I had talked to some of the board members, they said, well, it's been a while since we've talked about this project. So were they saying that they're all in favor of doing this project now?
Oh, yes. Sure. I've not heard anything negative about not doing the project. They actually just voted on the 7th of February to do this. And I can verify it by looking at the records. And I'm relatively sure it was unanimous.
Okay, because I was talking to a school board member, some of the questions I had was that, when the school board voted to close Eatonville and Faith, they said we had too many seats in elementary. And also I remember when you were providing information, or the school system was providing information, that we had more seats in middle school also. So is those still the case, or have we had increased enrollments since then, or did closing Eatonville and Faith shore up the numbers for excess schools, excess seats?
When Faith and Enidville was closed, it helped a lot as far as filling empty seats in those spaces. It did. It actually increased our utilization rate by several points by doing that. The K-8 project right now that's being designed is a net 1. We're closing 2. So we're closing Knox and closing Overton and combining it into one facility.
But will you, are you going to funnel more students into the middle school there? I know there was excess seats in middle school and that wasn't addressed during closing Eatonville and Faith.
Middle school numbers are much closer. High school numbers are much closer. The majority of the seats that we have is in elementary level.
Okay.
But now that those 2 additional facilities have closed, the numbers are much closer.
Okay. So I guess the only question I had for Jay or Aaron, so voting for this tonight doesn't lock us into building this school at this point. It's just asking for the funds.
My understanding is if this is awarded, it still has to come back for final signature before the money is, because you have to sign an agreement. And it's mainly for reporting methods, reporting items that you'd have to sign again to do it.
Well, I mean, because I guess my question is, I don't know how long it takes to get awarded. How long does it take to get awarded these grants?
It's listed to be awarded fairly quickly. It's actually supposed to be awarded on April 12th.
April 12th. So I know, not to bring up a lot of old history, but when we were purchasing the mall, the LGC said, we weren't supposed to borrow money during an election like that. And so I know you guys have 5 of your 8 seats up this year, so I don't know how that would affect this. So I just want to make sure that if I vote for it, I'm not saying today that I'm voting for this school, because we don't know what's going to happen by the end of the year. And so that's why I was asking Jay or Aaron.
I don't know the answer to the flexibility within the grant of moving project funds from one to another if plans change. I don't know the answer to that.
But you are saying that just applying for the grant doesn't mean, it's just one step further. This is not the final step. We have to come back and approve any other funding or accepting the grant.
That's correct.
That's the way I understand it. Aaron,
Yeah, hello. Sorry. Yeah, I imagine if the, since we would be matching quite a bit of it, then we would be, the way we budgeted that is to borrow the money. So all that would have to come before the board for the LGC and then for, so yeah. I mean, I can't imagine them forcing us to do that if the commissioners decided they didn't want to.
I think, one more question. Is this a grant we can apply for again in the future?
Assuming that it comes out again, it's been out for several years now, each year periodically, but there is a box to check that says, have you applied before? Has this project been applied before? And I think, have you received any money before? And I think if you've received any before, it kind of kicks you to the back of the list again until others are able to do that.
Sure, thanks.
But I think that it would be available again, is my understanding.
Jay, let me get it straight. You said that we are committing only to letting them apply for this grant. And that we would vote, we would have another vote when we had a full group here if they were awarded the grant. Or if they.
That's the way I understand it. Now, if you want a definitive answer, you can table this to the first meeting in March. This is due March 15th. You've got a meeting March 7th, and we can defer it and have all 5 of you here, hopefully, at that meeting. And you can give us your questions, and Aaron and I can present those answers back to you so we're absolutely clear on what we think.
Randy Chris just sent me a text that said that the Department of Instruction will provide grant recipients with agreement forms following the announcement of awards. Signed agreements are due within 60 days of the award. So presumably if we don't sign it, we don't get it.
Right.
But after it's awarded.
But the board did not, what they're asking y'all to vote on is not to award the grant. It's to apply for a grant. So yeah, and I certainly am not going to sign an acceptance of a award without the board voting on it. So if you just make it clear that your motion, if you're inclined to approve it, the application of it, and you could even state you're voting to approve the grant application, but you're not agreeing to accept the grant funding at this time.
Signing it tonight, signing the paperwork is just saying that you're acknowledging that it's been applied for. So it's just to apply.
So this is like pretty much any other grant application that comes before us then, correct, Aaron?
Presumably, yes.
Yeah, because we have a lot of these in the health department and social services. So that's why I'm familiar.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then. We approve the right for the school system to apply for this grant.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Carries.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right.
Hey, Mr. Van, can I speak to you for 1 second?
All right, let's back up. All right, at this time, I'd like to call Amanda Whitaker with Whitaker Raven, Renell forward to provide the information regarding public hearing for the closeout of the CBG-ED grant for Chewett facility.
You're right, you're right. I'm sorry.
she here?
She's joining us remotely. If you give us
Yes.
just a second.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Amanda Whitaker with Withers Ravenel, and I am here just to present the closeout of the Chewy project. You guys received a $1.5 million grant to install a sewer line and extend it over to the new Chewy facility. That has been completed. The county procured Gilbert Engineering to do that work, and they installed approximately 5,145 linear feet of sewer line over to that Chewy facility. As part of the contract, Chewy agreed to create at least 385 full-time jobs that went to folks who were at least 50% low to moderate income for the area. They actually created approximately, probably by now, over 1,988 jobs, and they were at least 70% of LMI. So the project is complete. The sewer line has been installed, and the company has created their jobs. So now the state requires you guys to hold a closeout public hearing that just explains that to the public and get any public comment about the grant. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have prior to opening it up to the floor.
What was the job number you gave that they have created?
As of their last annual report at the end of the year, they had reported 1,988 new jobs, but they were hiring, on a regular basis. So I expect it to be more than that by now.
Thank you.
All right, let's open up the public.
Any other questions? All right, at this time, I would like to open public hearing for the CBG grant, CDBG ED 181E 3052 grant. Anybody at the it's now open, and if there's anybody here that would like to address this, make comments. Hearing none.
Here we go.
I'm gonna
Internet.
April, have you got anybody that wants to talk about this grant?
We'd like to invite any of our remote participants, if you'd like to speak during this time, if you use the raise your hand feature in the Zoom application, and we'll give just a moment. And Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't see anyone indicating they wish to speak at this time.
All right, at this time, since there's nobody to have a question, do we have to take a vote on this?
You have to close the public hearing.
I'm going to do that.
And then I'll make a motion.
All right. All right, we are officially closed out. And
I'll make a motion that we accept the closeout of CBG-ED 18E 3052 grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I had a question real quick though. That
Okay.
Wouldn't affect my vote though. I was just curious, these CDBG grants, is there a limited number the county can have at one time?
I do not know the answer to that.
Aaron, this is Amanda. Typically, there is a $3 million cap at the state level for the small communities grant. Sometimes they will release that cap for an economic development project. So if you have other projects that are already in play, they will allow you to exceed that cap if it's for economic development purposes.
But we've had to close out grants before in order to apply for a new grant. So there is a limit out there. Because one year we had a new one in and they were like, wait a second, we got to close down RDH tire grant because it was outstanding. And so
That's what I was thinking. So this is good to go and get this closed so we can apply for others. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Amanda.
All right, Jim.
Okay. Shane Stewart, we're ready to hear from you again. And you have 3 minutes, and that's all.
That much, so I'll be good. By the way, Mr. Doug Foley is online for the next 2 applications if there are any questions, but I think the board is well versed on these SNIA permits. Always keep in mind, any staff reports you have, we will have running totals at the bottom for the calculations. So this is one of the last lots of the pit road, that park out there. Real quick, we approved an SNIA permit for this parcel here back in '06. Never was constructed, but now the request would be for this parcel as well. They've since been combined. It would be a 14,000 square foot race shop for cars and also parts. And for the watershed, Cottle Creek, we're at 0.013% of our 10%. 12,000 acres in the watershed, we've only gave up just under 160. So there's the site plan before you. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer, or Mr. Foley.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve SNIA 01-22, the LaFlam Trust.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Shane Stewart.
And the next one.
Left.
And this is Mr. Foley's park, horsepower park. This is the second request that's been considered in that park. There's about 8 lots, I believe, in the development. This one's a little bit more interesting. The applicant here is they fly helicopters over the Duke Energy right-of-way to survey and inventory that. So there's a helipad here, and this will be a maintenance building, office, and also accessible for the helicopter too for storage. So same watershed, different park, second lot out of 8. Any questions?
What are the numbers on it?
Ma'am?
What does it raise our numbers to?
So considering the other one, again, we're just right over 1% of our 10.
Okay, thanks.
Staff, side note, not to cut into my time, but staff is working on trying to figure out a way to bring some text to the board to consider with this type request. You'd be surprised what our neighbors do. It's just kind of wide open.
We've heard some rumors about our neighbors.
I make a motion to approve SNIA 02-22.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Valerie's turn.
All right, we are skipping over now to item number 8. We have the infamous Miss Valerie Steele here with us.
And it says IRS. Oh.
That better. So tonight I'm here to ask for consideration for a change to the state capital infrastructure grant. This grant is a little different than some of the ones we've talked about so far today, as in we've already received this money and it's a legislative grant. So it is not an item that we applied for or an application process, and there is no local match. The money has already been awarded and it was intended for a specific project. We have received or will be receiving $5 million in state capital and infrastructure funding. I'm very, very thankful to have been given this allocation for the hangar expansion project. It would include a public safety hangar where State Highway Patrol could go, as well as the maintenance and in inclement weather for Novant to stay in. That's their helicopter. Since the state budget has been done and this funding was allocated, there's been an urgent need come to my attention at the airport and our ILS system is not functioning right now, and the parts and items to fix it are no longer supported. And so I'm here today to give you a little information and ask for the BOC to consider discussion with our state representatives to use part of this funding to update our ILS system. So this is like all other grants for the airport, going through NCDOT and the Department of Aviation for our grant administration. We had a meeting on the 10th. They're still finalizing the process of how they're going to get the money to us, but upfront they're saying 50% will be in our grant system by February 26th and the remaining 50% before the end of FY22. That's a very aggressive timeline. We don't normally see them do this, but because it's a legislative grant, again, it's very different than our projects, which we do through NPE funding or with DOA. The funding's already there and given to us. Just real quick, I'll breeze through the next couple of slides to explain the instrument landing system is the ILS. It's a precision approach based on 2 radio beams together, bringing a pilot in using vertical and horizontal guidance, enabling them to land in low visibility, depending on their capabilities in the aircraft, down to 0 visibility. There was a partial replacement completed in December. They came and did a glide slope check. That's where the FAA comes and flies it and determined the localizer had issues. Our technician has been out there. There's multiple cables damaged between lightning strikes and wildlife chewing on them. I found out on January 27th that there were letters provided in 2013 and 2016 indicating different components of the ILS were no longer going to be supported, meaning one is coming up on 10 years and one is coming up on about 5 years of items that they don't make the parts, they don't have the equipment, there's nowhere to get it from. Right now, they're attempting to refurbish some parts from a system in Virginia that was taken offline to see if they can retrofit them just to get us back up and running. So it's kind of like a Band-Aid or duct tape. The negative impact if we don't have ILS is losing our business tenants, reduction in flights. You're not able to fly unless it's VFR conditions, visual only approaches. Currently, the NOTAM is issued for March 22nd at least, and it may require longer. And we will have to pay for another FAA flight check to come in and verify this is working. Without a solid infrastructure on our airfield with a runway and a taxiway and good ILS system, we can't support our aviation tenants successfully. Just to give you a better idea of what the pilot sees with their glide slope and how they're coming into the runway. Another visual. And if you have questions, I'll explain it more, but like I said, it's vertical and horizontal, bringing you straight into the runway. So there's been discussions in the past with our engineers, which is TBE and DOA, the Department of Aviation. There has been a project in place for the remainder. The design was completed and the bid phase in 2019, but it was placed on hold between COVID and lack of funding. We did receive sufficient bids, but a bid was not awarded. So we are at the stage, according to DOA, at least initially, of that bid could be awarded if they were willing to honor the prices of 2019. We would not have to rebid because we've successfully done all the steps needed. We just did not award the bid. So again, I'm requesting consideration that 2 million of these funds be allocated to a complete replacement in the ILS. This should put us in a position for another 20 years of not needing anything. And by then there's probably going to be a new type of GPS landing. But if the board is in agreements on the importance of an ILS being our next project, the next and most important step is speaking with the representatives. We need to go back to Carl Ford and Harry Warren and ensure that they are comfortable with modifying these funds because they were given to us for the hangar expansion and public safety aspect. And it is a legislative grant, not what we choose to necessarily use it on. But again, it's imperative to consider this need was not something that was known about in July when these funds were requested for the hangar project. And now that it's come to my attention and we have the money available, I would hope that they would support it. And it is in the interest of public safety in a different way of safe landings at our airport. Sure. So that's where we're at.
Valerie, I agree with you. This is paramount for safety at the airport. My only question to you is, out of the $5 million that was awarded, if we take $2 million to bring us up to speed, will that leave us enough money to build a hangar for the highway patrol?
That'll leave 3 million, which is not the full amount for highway patrol, but the highway patrol hangar, if I'm not mistaken, was already funded for. And this legislative grant was an additional amount that would add to what could have already been funded out of that state sales or the sales tax that came out specific for public safety that was initially going to be used for the public safety hangar. So we had 12.5 million set aside. This was an additional 5 on top of that.
Okay, as long as we can build that hangar, because that was our commitment. That's my only concern.
And again, this is just requesting permission to reach out to the senator and our representative and see if they're on board. If you guys all felt that was, and I didn't know which cart before the horse, so I figured come to you first before reaching out to them, but it's absolutely, we'll still use it the other way. If not, there'll be a request from me coming to how do we find a way to support getting our ILS back online.
We got to have that.
So let me just throw this out there. I mean, would it be simpler just to use the 5 million for the hangar, allocate the 2 million that we were going to use for the hangar for this?
The money we set aside for that hangar was 1/4 cent sales tax for public safety. Is what you're talking about related to countywide public safety?
That was the initial legislative request, which is why if the legislative members say, we're fine with you using it for the ILS, it's okay. The only qualification is that it has to be used for capital, and capital is real property, new construction, rehabilitation of existing facilities, and repairs and renovations over 100,000. So according to DOA, it 100% qualifies. They're fine with us. They actually asked us to put it on because we had to do paperwork very quickly, listed as a project. And then if the representatives were not in favor with it, we could take it off versus add it back on.
So if we used 5 million of the 1/4 cent sales tax, I mean, of the grant, I don't know that we could, I don't know if the board would want to vote to use the 2 million for something that's not related to public safety.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. So that's where that was coming from.
The other aspect is this is something that we can immediately use the funding for. There is a tie-in that the capital grant, the 5 million has to be expended by 2024. So getting it spent very quickly would assist us in not running into time lapses on not having the funding versus the 12.5 is coming from internal county funding. So there's no timeline on that aspect of using the money. So you could use the 3 million left first on the public safety hangar and then expend all of your funding without the worry of the time clock running out on not getting it done with delays that are unexpected. COVID and things, there's still, it took us a year to get a hangar door. So
the faster, the better.
I can't imagine that you could run an airport without an
Not much,
ILS.
just in the daytime.
It's like some of those cars you just drive them when they're pretty.
Yeah, well, I don't drive them at all right now. So.
All right, do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we reallocate $2 million for the ILS project and reach out to Senator Ford and Representative Warren for their approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
See if I can get my foot out of my mouth and do something else here. All right, Mr. Alan Kress of the Rowan County Emergency System and TJ Brown, Acting EMS Division Chief, will present the request for the purchase of AEDs and cardiac monitors from Zoll Medical Corporation. Anna Bumgarner, Rowan County Director of Purchasing and Contract Administration, is present as well. There you are. I didn't see you back there.
Thank you. Good evening, all. So we'll try to keep it short. You have to stand back, don't you? So there are 3 proposals in here that Anna has put together for us. The first is for 4 monitors and everything that is needed to operate them and maintain them for their use and everything. Those 4 are being paid for with, if you approve, they'll be paid for with ARP funds. They will be specifically used on our community paramedic trucks, which we have 1 truck up and running now, with another one should be coming up 1st of March, I believe. So we're working, try to fill those trucks up now. The next proposal that Anna put together for us was for 21 monitors. These will replace the aged out monitors that we have now, and a couple more monitors than what we have now and what we asked for previously, but we sort of revamped our internal processes some to where we'll have more monitors to be able to go on staff vehicles. TJ will carry one in his vehicle. I'll have a defibrillator in mine. Our training officer will be able to have one in his. So if we're out and about in the county doing our jobs and everything, we'll be able to get to scenes quicker and be able to assist the paramedics before we get there. The other proposal is for 140 defibrillators, and those will go out to the various fire departments within the county, municipal and rural departments. It will replace everything that they have on their vehicles now, and they're the same type of monitor, so that about all the time they're always going to get there before us. If they have them hooked up to their monitor, we just come in, unplug one, and put it into our monitor, and it's pretty simple from there. So, any questions?
I was asking questions at one time about getting all of these and why we would change for that. And they were telling me exactly what you just talked about, is having somebody already on the scene and then coming in and this stuff just works together seamlessly. Made all the sense in the world after they talked about that.
Yes, sir. I invited Chief Zimmerman to come with us also. He's president of Fire Rescue Association, and he's been helping with some of the defibrillators as well. He's back there.
Is he awake though? All right, anybody got any questions about this?
I'll make a motion to approve all 3 contracts for state purchase.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I guess that did it.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay.
All right, we come to the fun part of this. The month of January, our folks from Environmental Services picked up 5.7 tons of litter and 93 tires.
Gosh almighty.
So I don't know why you would throw a tire out on the side of the road, but it's being done numerous times here. So folks, take your trash to the landfill.
Somebody scroll that down for us, or scroll it up.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
I was trying to see the bottom there.
93 tires. Oh my. Mr. Chairman, on a different topic, I would like to add that our COVID-19 new cases are going down, but we are still experiencing deaths, and we are now at 548 people that have died from COVID.
Okay. Mr. Howden. You're
Yes,
next.
sir. Good evening, Commissioners. We'll get started with the expenditure report through January. We're at $87 million, which is 1.5 million higher than last year. Let's move to the revenue. The revenue through January, we're at 104.2 million. Last year was 101.7 million, so $2.5 million higher this year than last year.
I'd just like to mention that the reason the expenditures are up this year are COVID mainly, aren't they, Jim?
Yes, we're spending a little bit more this year. We started some more capital projects, which we did not do last year. We put a lot of things on hold.
If you could go back to the previous slide, Jim. I'm just so impressed with the numbers going back to 19 at 88 million and now we're at 104. What percentage of increase are we looking at? I'm sorry. You can tell me afterwards. Keep going.
And keep in mind, we had a reval through there. That's why there's such a big increase. It is a big piece of it. But I will get you the percentage. April, let's go to the property tax. Through December, property tax is $70.4 million. Last year at the same time, 69.4, so $1 million increase. And the last graph, our favorite graph, sales tax. This is through the month of October. We're at 11.3 million, 1.3 million higher than last year. Sales tax is still going pretty good. And that is it. Has some questions.
No, I'm just going to say, remember everyone, shop local. It helps.
Thank you, sir. Next topic we'll go to is the budget amendments.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. See what I gotta read here. All right, at this time, the board is asked to enter into closed session in accordance with North Carolina General Statute 143 of 11A1 to consider approval of minutes of a closed session held on January the 3rd and other attorney-client privileges.
Need a motion, don't you?
And we will take a motion at this time.
So move.
Second. Anybody want a second? All right, we're out of closed session. Is there any
Motion
other
to,
motion anybody
motion
like
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor.
Let's go home.